My parents always told me they'd do anything to protect me, but when it came down to it, they chose jewelry over my life. I have a rare condition that requires constant treatments. To survive, I built a life support fund, over $21,000 saved dollar by dollar, with help from relatives who knew how vital it was. That account wasn't a luxury, it was survival. Then one night, at my sister's engagement dinner, her fiance bragged about the perfect diamond he bought her. Flawless, expensive, unforgettable. Something about his smug grin gnawed at me. When I checked my bank app later, my blood froze. My entire fund was gone, drained to just $84.67. The money had been wired to a jewelry store. When I confronted my parents, they didn't deny it. They admitted they'd stolen my lifeline to buy my sister's engagement ring. And when I demanded answers, they called me selfish. That's when I decided, if they wanted war, I'd bring it to a courtroom. My name is Rachel. I'm 27 years old, female, and I work as a medical transcriptionist. It's not glamorous, but it lets me work from home and keep a steady income despite the fact that my body doesn't always cooperate with me. I've lived with an autoimmune condition since I was 14, and it's shaped my entire life. Some days I can get by almost normally, typing reports, running errands, maybe even grabbing dinner with a friend. Other days I can't get out of bed. And without regular treatments, my condition doesn't just make me tired or sore. It kills me, slowly. That reality forced me to become cautious in ways most people my age never think about. I couldn't live paycheck to paycheck or trust that things would work out. My treatments were expensive, and the insurance loopholes made them even worse. Early on, I realized that if I wanted to stay alive, I had to build a safety net myself. So I started what I called my life support fund. It wasn't a charity thing, no GoFundMe, no fundraising campaigns. This was every cent I could scrape together from work, from small freelance gigs, even from birthday cards or tax refunds. My extended family chipped in at times too. A few of my uncles slipped me envelopes during holidays. My grandmother sent me checks with the note, "For your health, sweetheart, not for fun." They all knew what the fund was for. Everyone did. Over the years, it grew. At first, it was just a couple thousand, then 5, then 10. By the time this story begins, it had just crossed $21,000. To some people, that number might sound like much. To me, it was the difference between living and dying. It was the amount I needed for my next major procedure, plus enough cushion to cover the meds that kept me stable. That account wasn't extra savings. It was survival. And my parents knew it. My sister knew it. Everyone in my immediate family understood exactly what that money meant. That's what makes what happened next so hard to even put into words. Because if it had been strangers or some scammer online or a bank error, I could have dealt with that. But it wasn't. It was the people who claimed to love me most. At the time, though, I didn't see the storm coming. In fact, I thought things were looking up. My health was stable. I was keeping up with work. I'd even started walking around the neighborhood in the evenings again, something I hadn't done in years. For once, I thought maybe I could loosen my grip on the constant fear that followed me everywhere. Then my younger sister, Hannah, got engaged. She was 25, full of life, beautiful, the golden child of the family. Her boyfriend Daniel proposed with this big romantic gesture, and my parents were ecstatic. They'd always wanted a huge wedding for Hannah, something they could show off to their friends. Suddenly, every conversation at family dinners was about guest lists, venues, color schemes. My mom was glowing. My dad was talking about how Daniel was like the son he never had. And me? I sat there, smiling politely, trying not to feel the pit in my stomach grow wider. Because weddings are expensive. Engagement rings are expensive. And Daniel, for all his bravado, didn't exactly have the kind of job where he could drop tens of thousands without blinking. He worked in sales, not bad, but not luxury diamond money either. Still, he bragged constantly about how he wanted Hannah to have the best of everything. At first, I thought maybe I was just being cynical. Maybe he had savings. Maybe his parents helped. Maybe I was just jealous of the attention Hannah was getting. I told myself I was overthinking it. But deep down, something didn't sit right. That feeling only got stronger the night of the engagement dinner, when Daniel stood up in front of everyone and started boasting about the ring. He called it flawless. He called it a once-in-a-lifetime diamond for a once-in-a-lifetime woman. He smirked as he explained how much of a sacrifice it had been, how he'd spared no expense. My parents beamed like he'd won a Nobel Prize. Hannah blushed, soaking up every word. And I just sat there, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth, thinking, where the hell did he get that kind of money? By the time I got home that night, my unease had curdled into something sharper. I remember setting my purse on the counter, kicking off my shoes, and staring at my phone. My heart was already pounding even before I opened the banking app. I didn't know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing. Maybe just reassurance. But what I found was the first crack in everything I thought I knew about my family. The night of Hannah's engagement dinner is burned into my memory like a scar. It was one of those events my parents had been gushing about for weeks, the kind of family celebration they lived for. They booked a restaurant downtown, expensive, candlelit, the type where the napkins are folded into little sculptures and the waiters hover just enough to make you nervous. When I walked in, I could feel the buzz in the air. My mom was glowing, my dad already had his phone out taking pictures, and Hannah was showing off the ring like it was a crown jewel. Daniel, her fiancé, looked smug, like he just conquered Everest. Everyone else at the table leaned in, oohing and awing over the diamond. I tried to smile, I really did. I wanted to be happy for my sister. She was radiant in a way I hadn't seen before. But every time the light caught that diamond, my stomach twisted tighter. Then Daniel stood up, glass of champagne in hand. He tapped it with a fork and made a little toast. To Hannah, he said, voice booming, the love of my life, my partner, my best friend, and the only woman I'd ever spend this much money on. Laughter erupted around the table. He grinned, soaking it up. He went on, I wanted her to have the best, not just a ring, but the ring, a once-in-a-lifetime diamond for a once-in-a-lifetime woman. He held Hannah's hand up like a trophy. Flawless cut, perfect clarity, worth every single penny. My mom clasped her hands together like she was watching a Hallmark movie. My dad nodded proudly like Daniel had just proven himself worthy of the family. Hannah blushed, eyes shining. And me? I sat there, my pulse thudding in my ears. Because here's the thing. I knew Daniel's job. He worked in regional sales for a mid-sized company. Respectable, sure, but not the kind of salary where you can casually buy a ring like that without years of saving. And Daniel didn't strike me as the type who delayed gratification. He liked his gadgets, his nights out, his leased car. He wasn't sitting on some secret fortune. So where did the money come from? I picked at my food, barely tasting it, as conversations swirled around me. My cousins asked about the proposal. My parents bragged about how they'd always known Daniel was the one. I just kept staring at that diamond, my unease curdling into dread. At one point, Hannah leaned over and whispered, "Do you like it? Isn't it perfect?" I forced a smile. I really did. "It's beautiful," she beamed, completely oblivious to the storm raging in my head. The rest of the night dragged on. Daniel made a few more smug comments about how a man should sacrifice for his woman, and every word made my skin crawl. My parents looked at him like he'd hung the moon. I sat there silently, replaying his speech in my mind. When the check came, my dad insisted on paying, something he almost never did. That only made the knot in my stomach worse. By the time I finally got home, it was nearly midnight. I dropped my purse on the counter and kicked off my shoes, still replaying Daniel's words. Worth every single penny. Every single penny. My chest was tight. My hands were shaking. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe Daniel had a side hustle I didn't know about, or his parents had helped, or he'd taken out some crazy loan. But the thought kept drilling into my head. What if it wasn't his money at all? I grabbed my phone. My thumb hovered over the banking app for a long moment. Opening it felt like opening Pandora's box. Finally, I tapped it. The screen loaded, and what I saw next made my blood run cold. When the banking app finished loading, I blinked, convinced my eyes were playing tricks on me. The balance that usually gave me a small sense of security, a shield against the worst, was gone. Instead of just over $21,000, the screen showed $84.67. I refreshed the app, my fingers trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. Same number. I logged out, logged back in, still the same. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My chest tightened. For a moment, I honestly thought I might pass out. That fund wasn't just money. It was everything. It was my safety net, my lifeline, the thing that meant I could keep living a somewhat normal life. Without it, I was one health flare away from catastrophe. I forced myself to breathe and scrolled to the transaction history. That's when the real horror hit me. 3 weeks earlier, there was a wire transfer. $20,927.50. Recipient, a jewelry store downtown. The exact same store Daniel had bragged about at the engagement dinner. I just stared at the numbers, my mind refusing to process them. That money hadn't just vanished into thin air. It had been deliberately taken, drained out of the account in one swoop. And it wasn't strangers or hackers. It was family. Hot tears blurred my vision. My body went cold all over, like my blood had frozen in my veins. I knew, in that instant, exactly what had happened. My parents had stolen my lifeline to buy Hannah's ring. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Instead, I sat down on the kitchen floor, phone clutched in my hands, shaking uncontrollably. Every memory of the sacrifices I'd made to build that fund came flooding back. The nights I skipped dinner to stretch groceries another day. The times I told friends I couldn't go out because I was busy, when the truth was I couldn't afford it. The months I drove with my car's check engine light on, terrified it would break down because every spare cent had to go into that account. And now it was gone, cashed out for a diamond. The betrayal hit harder than the financial loss. My parents knew what that account meant. They knew it wasn't extra savings or a vacation fund. It was my lifeline. And they looked at all that, at the years of sacrifice, and decided Hannah's engagement mattered more? I don't know how long I sat there on the floor. At one point, I realized I'd been staring at the same spot on the wall, my phone screen still glowing in my lap, my mind looping between disbelief and rage. Finally, I stood up. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to move. I opened the app again, checked every tab, every log, every line of history. The evidence was there, in black and white. There was no mistake, no bank error, no hacker. It was deliberate. By the time the sun started to rise, I was still awake, pacing the kitchen. My emotions swung wildly. One moment I was sobbing, the next I was shaking with fury. I kept thinking, how could they do this? How could they steal my chance to live? But under all that chaos, one thought crystallized sharp and steady. I need answers. They weren't going to get away with this. The next morning, I grabbed my keys, got in my car, and drove to my parents' house. I didn't bother calling first. I drove straight to my parents' place, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. It was just past 8 a.m., the kind of hour where my mom would be in the kitchen with her first cup of coffee and my dad would be scrolling headlines like a ritual. I parked crooked in the driveway, barely remembered to turn off the engine, and walked inside with the spare key they'd insisted I keep for emergencies. This qualified. Mom looked up from the sink, sponge in hand, smile automatic. Then her eyes registered my face and the smile died. Rachel? Where is my money? My voice sounded strange to me, flat, like a recording. She blinked, mother confused act already loading. What? My life support fund, I said, setting my phone on the counter like a warrant. I opened the banking app, scrolled to the transfer, $20,927.50, wired 3 weeks ago to Carlton and Reed Jewelers. I turned the screen so it faced her. Why? She didn't touch the phone. Honey, I'm sure. Dad walked in, tie already knotted, laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He stopped when he saw the screen. There was a flicker in his eyes. Recognition? Guilt? Then it shuddered into something harder. Let's not start the day with drama. Where, I said, breath catching, is my money? He set the bag down carefully, like everything was normal. We used it. The words knocked the breath out of me. No apology, no explanation, just the bland finality of theft wrapped as a statement of fact. You used it? For your sister, for her engagement. This is a big moment for our family. We'll help you when the time comes. The time is now, I snapped. My next infusion is scheduled in 6 weeks, and the copay alone? We know your schedule, Mom cut in, arms folding. Don't be dramatic, Rachel. You've been stable for months. I stared at her. Stable because I can pay for treatment. She exhaled through her nose as if I were an unruly child. Your sister has one chance for a proper start. Daniel wanted to do it right. We helped. You didn't help. You stole. My hands were shaking. I set the phone down because I didn't trust myself not to throw it. That account is in my name. Every holiday card, every double shift, every skipped dinner. Do you understand what that money is? It's oxygen. Footsteps pounded down the hall. Hannah appeared, hair in a messy bun, wearing an oversized hoodie I'd given her years ago. She took in the scene, eyes flitting between us. What's going on? Your ring, I said, feeling something jagged rise in my throat. It was paid for with my medical fund. She blinked, then shook her head. Laugh, brothy. No, Daniel paid for it. He told me, Carlton and Reed, I said, pointing to the transaction on my phone. Wire transfer. There's only one person in this room with an account that matches that number. Hannah's face went slack. Her gaze fell to the diamond, that flawless stone glinting in the kitchen light. She curled her hand as if to hide it. Mom? The question was so small, it almost broke me. Mom's jaw tightened. We did what any parent would do. No, I said. No decent parent drains their sick child's lifeline for a piece of jewelry. Dad's voice sharpened. Watch your tone. I laughed. A short, shocked sound. My tone. Hannah's eyes filled. Rachel, please don't make this about you. It's my engagement. We were going to celebrate tonight. It is about me, I said, heat rising up my neck. It's literally my money. You always make things difficult, Dad said, the old criticism sliding into place like a key in a lock. We'll pay you back. When? I asked. With what? Interest? In time for the next procedure? Spell it out, Dad. Dates, numbers. He opened his mouth, closed it. Soon. I laughed. Again, uglier this time. Soon is not a plan. Soon doesn't buy medicine. Mom's voice got soft, dangerous. Your sister has waited for this her whole life. And I've been fighting for mine. Every single day. Silence, except for the drip of the facet and the thud of my pulse. Hannah wiped her cheek, blinking hard. You're ruining this. There it was, the switch. Not, we took what kept you alive, but you're ruining this. The gaslight came on so smoothly I nearly doubted myself. Nearly. I took a breath and anchored myself to facts. The account is solely in my name. The bank confirms the transfer originated from my login. Mom cut in too quickly. We know your password. The room froze. My head snapped toward her. You what? She recovered, fluster flashing across her face. You told me once you were sick and I needed to order your medication. That was 2 years ago and I changed it. Dad cleared his throat. We guessed. My mouth went dry. They'd been in my account, not once, deliberately. The violation crawled under my skin like ants. Hannah hugged herself. Stop, please. Can't we talk about this later? Daniel's parents are coming over tonight. I'm not covering for you, I said, voice quiet now, the rage cooling into something colder. You took my lifeline. You knew exactly what it was. You knew exactly what it was for. Dad squared his shoulders. We are your parents. We do what's best for this family. And I'm your daughter. You left me with $84. No one spoke. In the window above the sink, I could see our reflections. Me, hollow-eyed. My mother stiff with righteousness. My father carved from granite. My sister clutching a ring like a talisman. A perfect portrait of a family that made a choice and wanted me to carry the shame for it. I picked up my phone and opened the Notes app. I need you to say it clearly, for the record. You transferred $20,927.50 from my medical fund to Carlton and Reed Jewelers. Yes or no? Dad's nostrils flared. We're not playing your games. Mom hissed. Rachel! Hannah whispered, Please don't do this. I hit record. Yes or no? Dad stepped forward. Turn that off. I held his gaze. Say it. For a heartbeat, everything held. Then he said, low and deliberate, we did what we had to do. Not yes, not no, but a confession wrapped in self-justification, the kind that sounds noble until you line it up against the facts. I stopped recording. You've made your position clear. Mom's voice softened into that faux compassion she used when she wanted compliance. We'll take care of you, sweetheart, when the time comes. It came the day you logged in. I'm leaving now before I say something I can't take back. Hannah reached for me. Please don't tell anyone. I looked at her ring. I won't have to, I said. It's already written down. Dad's jaw worked. You threatened this family, and you'll regret it. I slipped the phone into my pocket. No threats, I said, just accountability. I walked out to the driveway on legs that felt like glass. The morning heat pressed down, cicadas buzzing in the trees. In the car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the dashboard clock. 8:47 a.m. My breathing steadied. The fury had cooled into focus. Facts, paper trails, chain of custody. If love had failed, documentation would not. I pulled out my phone and opened the bank again, screenshotting every page. Balances, transfer numbers, timestamps. I saved copies to cloud and external. I texted myself the file names. Then I scrolled to my contacts and found a number I never thought I'd use outside a hypothetical. Hi, I said when the receptionist answered. I need to schedule a consultation. Today, if possible. It's about a theft. I ended the call and looked back at the house. My parents' neat lawn, the front door I just closed on, a version of my family that no longer existed. Behind that door, I could almost hear them rewriting the story already. Let them. I had the first piece of proof, and I wasn't done collecting. I thought the confrontation in the kitchen was the worst of it. I thought hearing my parents admit they'd gutted my life support fund was the low point. I was wrong. The real blow came in the days that followed, when I realized they weren't just defending what they did, they were rewriting the story. And in their version, I wasn't the victim, I was the villain. The first sign was a phone call from my aunt. She lives 2 states away, doesn't usually get involved in family disputes. But that morning, my phone lit up with her number. I answered, still groggy from a night of staring at spreadsheets and screenshots, and she launched right in. Rachel, what on earth is this nonsense about you attacking your parents? Your sister just got engaged, and you're making it all about money? I nearly dropped the phone. She didn't even ask if it was true. She'd already chosen a side. I'm not making it about money, I said slowly. It was my money, my medical fund. They emptied it for Hannah's ring. Silence. Then a sigh. Honey, your parents told me you've been unstable, that you're exaggerating, that you're trying to ruin Hannah's happiness because you're jealous. Jealous. The word hit like a slap. By noon, I'd had 3 more calls, an uncle, a cousin, even my grandmother. Each conversation was a variation of the same script. Don't ruin this for Hannah. Don't embarrass the family. Don't hold a grudge over money. I realized with a sick kind of clarity that my parents were already on offense. They hadn't even tried to apologize or negotiate with me. Instead, they'd gone straight to character assassination. According to them, I was selfish. I was bitter. I was obsessed with money. No mention that the money in question was the only thing standing between me and a hospital bed. At first, I tried to explain. I told them about the transfer, the bank logs, the receipts. But the more I explained, the more it felt like quicksand. The relatives didn't want details. They wanted me to shut up and get back in line. One cousin even said, "You can't put a price on love, Rachel." I bit back the urge to scream. No, but apparently you can't put a price on my life. The worst part wasn't the accusations. It was the doubt they planted in me. Alone in my apartment at night, staring at the ceiling, I'd hear my parents' voices. You're overreacting. You're selfish. We'll help when the time comes. Was I overreacting? Was I really the selfish one for not wanting my sister's engagement to overshadow everything? Maybe I should have stayed quiet. Maybe I should have swallowed the loss. But then I'd opened the banking app again. $84.67. The number glared back at me like a verdict, and I'd remember, no, I wasn't crazy. Facts don't lie. So while my parents spun their story, I started quietly spinning mine into a case. Every night, I added to a folder on my laptop, screenshots of the transactions, copies of medical bills, old messages where my parents acknowledged the fund existed for treatments. I even found photos from years ago, birthday cards from relatives with notes like, "For your health fund, sweetheart." If they wanted to fight dirty with words, fine. I'd fight clean with proof. But the isolation cut deep. Friends I thought were neutral started pulling away, not wanting to get caught in the middle. Hannah stopped answering my texts. The only people who still spoke to me regularly were coworkers, and even they sensed something was wrong when I showed up to Zoom meetings looking hollow-eyed and brittle. The final straw came when I overheard my parents at a family barbecue. I wasn't invited, of course, but a sympathetic cousin FaceTimed me quietly from the corner of the yard. Through her phone, I watched my parents laugh with relatives, shaking their heads about Rachel's jealousy spiral. That was the moment the grief hardened into resolve. They thought they could gaslight me into silence. They thought they could drown me in shame until I gave up. But shame doesn't hold up in court. Evidence does. So the next morning, I pulled up the number I'd saved from the receptionist's call, the lawyer's office. And this time, I didn't just ask for a consultation. I set the appointment. Walking into a lawyer's office felt surreal, like stepping onto a stage in a play I didn't audition for. I wasn't the kind of person who sued people. I wasn't litigious. I avoided conflict when I could. But sitting in that waiting room, clutching a folder so full of printouts it barely closed, I realized my parents had left me no other option. The receptionist called my name, and I followed her back to a conference room. Neutral beige walls, a polished oak table, diplomas framed in mahogany. The lawyer walked in a moment later, mid-40s, crisp navy suit, steel gray hair. His handshake was firm, but not the fake kind. "So, Rachel," he said, settling across from me, "tell me why you're here." I laid it out piece by piece. My condition, the life support fund, years of sacrifices, the $21,000 balance, and then the wire transfer to a jewelry store, clearing the account in one move. I slid the printouts across the table. He studied them silently, flipping through bank statements and receipts. At one point, he stopped and muttered under his breath, "Carlton and Reed? Oh boy." Then he looked back at me, eyes sharper now. "Let me confirm, this account was solely in your name?" "Yes." "No joint signers, no power of attorney granted?" "None, just me." He nodded. "Then what your parents did isn't just unethical, it's unlawful. This is a textbook case of conversion, essentially theft, but in civil terms." Hearing the word theft hit me like a slap. When I'd said it to myself, it felt too harsh, too extreme. But here it was, from a professional, spoken like fact. "They accessed your account how?" he asked. "My mother knew my old password from years ago. I changed it since, but I trailed off." He leaned forward. "But they guessed the new one." I nodded. "Yes, they admitted it in my kitchen. My dad said, 'We guessed it.'" His brow furrowed. "Did you record that?" Wordlessly, I pulled out my phone and played the clipped audio I'd captured. My dad's voice, low and deliberate. "We did what we had to do." The lawyer sat back, eyebrows raised. That's not a full confession, but combined with the transfer logs, it's damning. For the first time in weeks, I felt the ground under me stabilize. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was a victim of a crime. He outlined my options. We could file a civil lawsuit for conversion, demand full repayment, and potentially damages. Because the money was earmarked for medical care, we could argue heightened harm. He warned it wouldn't be fast. Cases like this can drag out for months, sometimes longer. And family cases, they get messy. I swallowed. What happens if we win? Best case, judgment in your favor, repayment plus damages, possibly with wage garnishment if they refuse. Worst case, settlement, maybe less than the full amount, but you have a strong hand here. The thought of dragging my parents into court made my stomach twist. But then I thought about the fund, my lifeline, reduced to $84.67. I thought about my sister flashing her diamond while I lay awake at night calculating how long my meds would last. I straightened in my chair. "I want to file." He didn't blink, just nodded, pulled a legal pad toward him, and began outlining next steps. Documentation, complaint drafting, service of process. He asked for everything. Emails, texts, even old birthday cards from relatives that mentioned the fund. He said, the more you can show this money was specifically intended for your medical care, the stronger our argument. By the time I left his office, my folder was lighter, but my chest felt heavier in a different way. This wasn't just a family fight anymore. It was a legal battle. Outside, the late afternoon sun was blinding. I sat in my car for a long moment, watching people stroll past with shopping bags and coffee cups, living their lives without the weight of betrayal pressing down on them. My phone buzzed with a new voicemail from my mother. I didn't play it. Instead, I opened my notes app and typed a single line. They wanted war. Now they'll get it. 2 weeks after I met with the lawyer, the papers went out. The complaint was filed in civil court. Conversion, breach of trust, demand for repayment plus damages. My parents were officially defendants in a lawsuit. I wasn't there when they were served. A process server went to their house on a Tuesday morning and handed them the packet. But I didn't need to be there to feel the explosion. It landed in my lap within the hour. First came my dad's voicemail. His voice was low and dangerous, the kind of tone he only used when he wanted me afraid. You think you're smart, Rachel? Suing your own parents? You've humiliated this family. You'll regret this. Then came my mother's call. I didn't pick up, but her voicemail was a performance in itself. Sobbing, sniffling, her voice breaking like she was on stage. How could you do this to us? To your father? To your sister? We are your family, Rachel. Families don't sue each other. Do you want to destroy us? I played both voicemails twice. Then I saved them in a new folder. Evidence. That night, my phone buzzed nonstop. My sister, Hannah, sent walls of text, paragraphs that swung between rage and guilt-tripping. How could you do this on the eve of my wedding planning? Do you hate me that much? Are you jealous? This is literally just money. You're making it bigger than it is. You've ruined everything. I'll never forgive you. At 1 a.m., Daniel himself texted me. You don't know what you're doing. Call this off before it goes too far. Too far, as if draining a life support fund for a diamond ring hadn't already crossed that line. By morning, the smear campaign was in full swing. My cousin messaged me, repeating word for word my parents' talking points. I was unstable, jealous, desperate for attention. An uncle emailed me to say, you'll regret dragging this through the courts. You'll lose everyone if you keep this up. The message was clear. Surrender, back down, let it go. But here's the thing. They didn't realize I'd already crossed my own Rubicon. The moment I filed that complaint, I accepted there was no going back. Even if I wanted to forgive, even if I wanted to patch things up, the betrayal was too deep. So instead of crumbling under their pressure, I doubled down. Every message they sent me, I saved. Every voicemail, every rant, every attempt to guilt or intimidate me, I archived it all. Proof that they weren't victims. Proof that they knew exactly what they'd done. My lawyer, when I forwarded him the files, said, they're making our case stronger. Keep everything. Still, I won't lie, the isolation hit me like a freight train. Friends I thought would support me grew distant, saying things like, this is between you and your parents, I don't want to get involved. Even coworkers seemed to tiptoe around me. I started eating dinner alone, staring at the walls of my apartment while my phone buzzed with accusations from relatives. Nights stretched long and sleepless. Anxiety clawed at me, but beneath it burned something steadier, resolve. Because buried in all the noise, all the guilt-tripping, all the threats, there was a pattern. My parents weren't denying what they did. Not once. They never claimed innocence. They just insisted that I had no right to fight back. And that, in its own way, was an admission. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. Enough time for the noise to build. Enough time for me to second-guess myself 100 times. But each time I opened the folder on my laptop, filled with bank logs, screenshots, voicemails, text, the doubt faded. I wasn't destroying the family. They had done that the moment they sold my lifeline for a diamond ring. The papers were served. The battle lines were drawn. Now all that was left was the courtroom. The courthouse smelled like paper and floor polish, a quiet antiseptic hush that made every shoe squeak sound like a confession. I arrived 15 minutes early with my lawyer, a messenger bag cutting into my shoulder, the zipper tugging at a stack of labeled folders. Bank-01, medical-03, comms-02. The labels made me feel calmer than I was. My parents sat on the other side of the aisle with their attorney, a tan man with silver hair and the patient smile of someone who bills by the hour to watch families implode. Mom didn't look at me. Dad did, once, and then away, jaw ticking. Hannah slipped in behind them with Daniel. She started to lift her hand in a reflexive wave, then remembered and folded it back down, the rings flash dying in the low light. Case number 24-CV3119, the clerk called. Rachel Myers versus Edward and Laura Myers. We stood. The judge, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a voice that could cut through concrete, took the bench. Counsel, appearances, names, titles, introductions. The ritual of the state taking notice. My lawyer's hand brushed my elbow. Steady. Defense counsel opened with a soft voice statement about a family misunderstanding, a temporary reallocation of funds, and every intention to repay. He used the word love 3 times in under a minute. He never said medical fund. He never said unauthorized transfer. He used phrases like helped Daniel do right by Hannah and kept the family together. His smile did most of the talking. Then it was our turn. My lawyer didn't bother with poetry. Your Honor, the account at issue is solely in my client's name. The transfer of $20,927.50 on March 17th to Carlton and Reed Jewelers was unauthorized. The funds were earmarked for ongoing medical treatment necessary to prevent life-threatening flare-ups. We will show bank records, contemporaneous communications, acknowledging the fund's purpose, and admissions by the defendants that they accessed the account without consent. He paused. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is conversion. The judge nodded once. Proceed. We started with foundation. The bank's custodian of records appeared by video link, a woman with a headset and a stack of PDFs on her screen. My lawyer walked her through authentication. Account number ending in 1443. Registered to me. Login IPs, the wire details, the timestamp, 03-17-1012-43 a.m. Originating from my parents' home IP, the one ending in .57. Defense objected to the IP testimony as speculative. The judge overruled. Properly qualified business records exception. Exhibit A appeared on the courtroom monitors. My statement, the balance column plummeting like a cliff where the transfer hit. I felt the back of my throat go tight, but I kept my eyes on the screen. Facts, not feelings. Exhibit B, my lawyer said, and the Carlton and Reed invoice filled the screen, faint watermark and all. Solitaire, 1.75 CT, VVS1, platinum setting. Final price, $20,927.50. Paid by wire. The sales manager's affidavit sat in our binder like a loaded trap. We'd use it if they tried to deny. Defense counsel crossed the custodian with feigned boredom. Isn't it possible Miss Myers authorized someone to access the account? He asked. Possible? We don't track consent, only logins. So you can't say who pressed submit, can you? No. But I can say where the login came from. He frowned like she missed the point. The judge didn't. Next, my lawyer called me. The oath left my mouth dry. He took me through the story cleanly, without editorial. Diagnosis at 14, the fund's creation, contributions from relatives, explicit purpose, the balance before the transfer, the number after. He asked me to read the amount out loud. I did. He asked how the treatments are scheduled, what happens if I miss them. The room seemed to shrink to the size of the microphone as I said, I get sick and I don't bounce back. Did you give your parents permission to access your account? He asked. No. Did you give them your password? No. Did they admit to accessing it? Yes. I nodded toward the evidence cart. I recorded my father saying we did what we had to do, and my mother said they guessed my password. We played the clip. My father's voice, low and certain, filled the room. The defense objected to lack of context. Overruled. The judge had already heard the foundation for the recording. Cross-examination came with a practiced frown. Miss Myers, defense counsel began. You love your sister, don't you? I do, I said, surprised by how easy that truth still was. And you want her to be happy? Yes. So when Daniel proposed, it was a joyous moment for the family. For some of the family, I said. My lawyer's foot tapped my chair. Answer, don't argue. I folded my hands. He pivoted. Isn't it true that your parents have always supported you, driven you to appointments, paid for medications when insurance lapsed? They've helped in the past. They also took $20,927 without my consent. He spread his hands, a showman's sigh. This is a family that takes care of each other. Your parents believed they were doing the right thing, redistributing resources with the intent to repay. You've been stable, by your own admission. Perhaps you overreacted. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Defense counsel tried another angle. You recorded your father without telling him. Yes. Do you often record your family? I started when they stopped telling me the truth. A murmur rippled behind me. The judge lifted a finger. Silence returned like a snapped line. We moved to communications. Exhibit C, a photo of a birthday card from my grandmother, for your health fund, not for fun. Exhibit D, a text from my mother last year. Let me know when your treatment schedule is set. We'll make sure you have enough in the fund. My lawyer let the words sit there, their mundanity more devastating than any speech. They knew. They'd always known. The defense called my mother next. She took the stand with the prim posture she used at church. Her voice trembled at the edges, calculated but not entirely. She said, "We never meant to hurt Rachel. We thought she's been stable. Daniel wanted to do the right thing. We would have paid her back." From what income? My lawyer asked on cross-examination. Do you have the $20,927 today? She blinked. No. But over time? By when? He asked. Give us a date. Silence. Do you deny that you texted her about ensuring there was enough in the fund? Her mouth opened, then shut. I was trying to comfort her. By emptying the account? Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. The judge's eyes, however, didn't soften. My father's testimony was shorter. He went on about family first and doing what we had to do. When pressed for specifics, repayment schedules, sources of funds, why they hid the transfer for 3 weeks, he grew evasive. He said, "We didn't hide it, we just didn't tell her yet." Until when? My lawyer asked. Until after the engagement, he said, like the answer should stand on its own feet. By late afternoon, the courtroom air felt heavy with spent oxygen. We had one more witness slotted for recess. My lawyer glanced at our outline, then at me, then at the defense table where Daniel sat too straight, jaw working. Plaintiff calls Daniel Cole. A small shock moved through the row behind me. Daniel stood, smoothed his tie, and walked to the stand with a stiffness that didn't read as confidence. He swore in, eyes flicking to Hannah. She gave him a small, brittle smile. The diamond threw a spear of light across the counsel table. My lawyer began gently. Mr. Cole, congratulations on your engagement. Thank you, he said, voice thin. You purchased an engagement ring from Miss Hannah Myers. Yes. Did you pay for that ring? A beat. It was paid. By whom? His throat worked. It came from the family. Be precise, my lawyer said, voice still mild. From which account did the payment originate? Daniel glanced at my parents, then at the judge, then at Hannah. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear someone shift in the wooden pews behind me. He started, then stopped. Mr. Cole, the judge said, not unkindly. Answer the question. He swallowed. It came from Rachel's account. No one moved, no one breathed. For a single lucid second, the room seemed to tilt, and I watched Hannah's face drain of color, her hand drifting instinctively toward the ring, as if it might burn her. My lawyer let the silence lengthen, a fisherman feeling the line tighten. And did you know, at the time of that purchase, had you known what that account was, would you have... Court resumed at 9:03 a.m., the kind of morning where the fluorescents feel harsher and the air feels thinner. I sat behind our counsel table with a legal pad I didn't need, pen uncapped, hands steady for the first time in weeks. Today was cross. Daniel took the stand again. The defense tried to fix what cracked yesterday. Mr. Cole, their attorney began, voice dipped in sympathy. You love Hannah, correct? Yes. You never intended to harm Rachel? No. You believe this was a family matter, that the funds would be replaced? Yes. He nodded sagely as if the truth were something you could varnish. You testified yesterday that you didn't know the source of funds until you saw the complaint. That remains true. Daniel swallowed. Yes. The defense sat, satisfied. My lawyer stood without theatrics, flipped a tab in his binder, Exhibit H, Carlton and Reed email, and walked to the lectern. Mr. Cole, he said mildly, You purchased the ring on March 17th, correct? Yes. And Carlton and Reed sent you an email confirmation of the order, correct? Yes. My lawyer glanced at the judge. Permission to publish Exhibit H for impeachment. Granted, she said. The monitor lit with a clean, white email. Subject line, payment received, Rachel Myers wire confirmation, to d.cole at date March 17th, 10:19 a.m. The body. We have received a wire in the amount of $20,927.50 from Rachel Myers. Your order, invoice number CR-38912, is now paid in full. Please retain this confirmation for your records. The jeweler's logo sat smugly in the footer. A low rustle moved through the gallery. Mr. Cole, my lawyer asked, did you receive this message? Daniel stared at the screen like it had just unzipped his chest. Yes. And you received it on March 17th at 10:19 a.m., 2 minutes after the wire posted? Yes. So when you testified that you only learned yesterday, that was untrue. He flinched. I didn't remember the wording. I thought they said it was family money. Who said? Her parents, he whispered. The defense popped up. Objection, hearsay. Sustained, the judge said. Then to Daniel, answer only what you knew and when you knew it. My lawyer didn't press the hearsay. He didn't need to. The metadata at the top of the screen did the work a dozen adjectives couldn't. From, billing at carltonreed.com, received, March 17th, 10/19/12-0400. Message ID, a string of numbers that felt like a chain of custody stamped in light. Nothing further for this witness, my lawyer said. The defense declined redirect. Daniel walked back to his seat without looking at Hannah. She sat rigid, the ring heavy on her hand, a bright lie under courthouse lights. Next, we called the Carlton and Reed accounts manager by video. She authenticated the invoice, the email, and the store's practice of sending confirmations to purchasers listing the payer of record from the wire. The defense attempted to suggest clerical error. She was polite but unmoved. If a customer pays by wire, our system requires the payer's name for reconciliation. It is automatically populated from the bank's confirmation file. It is not a field we edit. Then my lawyer did something I didn't expect. He recalled my mother. She approached the stand slower today. The primness was frayed. She clutched a tissue like a talisman. She swore in, sat down, and folded her hands. Mrs. Myers, my lawyer began, yesterday you testified you intended to repay. Today I want to ask about acquisition, specifically how you accessed Rachel's account. Her chin lifted. We guessed the password. What did you guess? Objection, defense said. Security concerns. Sustained, the judge said. Counsel, tread carefully. Mrs. Myers, my lawyer said, adjusting. Did you employ a pattern you knew Rachel used in prior passwords? A beat. Yes. So you used knowledge entrusted to you from medication ordering 2 years prior to gain access in March. She stared at a point just past his shoulder. We remembered. He leaned in a fraction. And you knew, when you gained access, that the account was Rachel's sole property. Silence. Mrs. Myers? Yes, she said, so quietly the court reporter asked her to repeat it. Yes. And you knew the purpose of the funds. Tissue twisting. We knew she used it for treatments. For medical care, he clarified. Correct? Yes. And despite that knowledge, you initiated a wire transfer to a jewelry store. Her face flushed. We did what he finished. Had to do. We've heard. He pivoted to a printout. Exhibit K. He held up a screenshot of a text message from my mother last year. Let me know when your treatment schedule is set. We'll make sure you have enough in the fund. Mrs. Myers, you sent this. Yes. My lawyer set the exhibit down. Mrs. Myers, do you feel remorse for taking your daughter's medical fund? Defense bristled. Objection. Relevance. Overruled, the judge said, voice even. She may answer. My mother's eyes flashed, and for a second the mask slipped. I feel sorry she's doing this. I feel sorry she's dragging us through court, making a spectacle, when families should stay united. So no, my lawyer said softly. No remorse for the taking. Her jaw set. We were trying to keep this family together. By emptying a medical fund, he said, not asking. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. He let the censure land and then stepped back. Nothing further. Defense took her on redirect, tried to coax out the narrative of sacrifice and love. She leaned into it, chin trembling, tissue pressed to lips. It rang hollow under the weight of the email on the monitors. My father was next, recalled as well. My lawyer walked him through timestamps. The bank login at 10:11:04 a.m., the password success at 10:11:19, the wire initiation at 10:12:00 a.m., the bank's two-step authentication to the recovery phone on file, ending in 44. Mr. Myers, what number ends in 44? My father's eyes slid to the table. My wife's. So the two-factor code did not go to Rachel. No. It went to your household. Yes. And you entered it. Yes. And you selected Save Beneficiary as Carlton and Reed. A pause. Yes. Nothing further. Defense stood, attempted to summon the old certainties. Mr. Myers, did you love both your daughters when you made this choice? Yes, he said, which hung in the room like a misfired prayer. By midday, the story had hardened into evidence. It wasn't about feelings or feuds or who was the favorite. It was about what they did, when they did it, and what they knew. We rested our case after the bank, the jeweler, the recordings, and the messages. The defense rested with little more than character statements and the closing promise that families should not be judged as criminals for imperfect choices made in love. Closings came after a short recess. The defense went first, a tapestry of hurt feelings and future intentions. He said repay 9 times. He said love 11 times. My lawyer's close was spare. This is simple, he told the judge. Title to the funds was Rachel's alone. The defendants accessed her account without consent using a password pattern entrusted to them in a medical context. They moved $20,927.50 to a jeweler to purchase a luxury good. They concealed it for 3 weeks. They admitted the access, the transfer, the knowledge of the fund's purpose. That's conversion. We asked for the principal, statutory interest, and damages. He sat. The judge looked down at her notes, drew a small line, and said, I will take the matter under advisement and return with a decision. The gavel did not fall. Not yet. Instead, the clerk announced, this court will reconvene at 10 a.m. tomorrow for judgment. People stood, a chorus of benches scraping tile. My parents remained seated a breath too long, as if their bodies hadn't received the order to move. Hannah rose without looking at me, one hand wrapped around the other so tightly the knuckles blanched white. We filed out into the hallway's echo and glass. My lawyer touched my shoulder. He said, you did exactly what you needed. I nodded, the silence in my chest finally full of something that wasn't fear. Not triumph, something steadier, a truth that would hold when morning came. Tomorrow, the judge would speak, and the ring would finally cost what it always was worth. The courtroom felt colder the next morning. Maybe it was the air conditioning. Maybe it was the anticipation pooling in my stomach. But the walls seemed sharper, the light harsher. Everyone filed in quietly. No chatter, no whispers. Just the scrape of shoes on tile and the shuffle of papers. My parents were already seated when I entered with my lawyer. Mom's hands were clasped tight around a balled-up tissue, eyes rimmed red but dry. Dad sat stiff, jaw locked, staring at the bench as if sheer willpower could change what was about to happen. Hannah and Daniel sat behind them. Hannah's makeup was perfect, but her shoulders trembled. The diamond ring caught the fluorescent lights, throwing a flash that almost felt cruel. At 10:01 a.m., the clerk's voice rang out. All rise. The judge entered, robes flowing, face unreadable. We stood, then sat again as she settled into her chair. She adjusted her glasses, looked down at her notes, and began. This case, she said, involves the unauthorized transfer of funds belonging solely to the plaintiff, Rachel Myers. The defendants, Edward and Laura Myers, do not dispute that they accessed her account. They do not dispute that they transferred $20,927.50 to Carlton and Reed Jewelers. Their defense rests on the claim of intent to repay and the notion that this was a family matter. She paused, eyes moving slowly across the room. The law is clear. Consent is not optional. Ownership is not blurred by familial ties. Funds earmarked for medical necessity cannot be treated as discretionary simply because they are inconvenient to respect. Her words landed like stones. My mother shifted in her chair. My father's nostrils flared, but he didn't look away. The defendants knowingly accessed an account without authorization. They used a prior knowledge of a password pattern, and they employed a two-factor code sent to their own household. They were aware the funds were for medical care, as evidenced by communications and testimony. This constitutes conversion under statute. My heart pounded in my ears. I gripped the edge of the table, every muscle braced for the next words. Therefore, the judge said, her voice firm, judgment is entered in favor of the plaintiff. The defendants are ordered to repay the full $20,927.50 plus statutory interest and damages totaling an additional $5,000. Repayment is to begin immediately. If not voluntarily complied with, this court authorizes wage garnishment until the judgment is satisfied. For a moment, silence. Then the gavel cracked once, sharp and final. I exhaled for the first time in months. My lawyer gave a small nod, just the acknowledgement of a job done. I turned slightly, scanning the courtroom. Hannah was crying quietly, mascara staining her cheeks. Daniel's face was pale, his jaw slack. My mother pressed her tissue to her lips, shaking her head. My father sat stone still, but his eyes burned into mine, hatred where love should have been. I wanted to feel triumphant. I wanted to feel vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow, because what had been taken from me wasn't just money. It was trust, family, safety. No judgment could give that back. Still, justice mattered. The fund would be rebuilt, piece by piece, even if it had to come from garnished wages. My treatments would continue. I would live, and they would live with what they'd done written into the court record, public and permanent. When the hearing adjourned, I gathered my folders and walked out without a word. In the hallway, reporters weren't waiting. This wasn't news to anyone but us, but it was everything to me. The last time I saw my parents was in that room. Dad refused to look at me as they left. Mom brushed past me, muttering something about betrayal. Hannah wouldn't meet my eyes. But as I stepped into the sunlight outside, I realized something. The betrayal wasn't for me to carry. It was theirs. They had sold my life for a diamond. And in the end, the only thing that glittered was the paper trail that buried them.